Hey, what is up guys? My name is Oleg, this is Mr. Bond. Welcome back to the channel. Today, a little bit of a different video. I want to talk about my opinion on the impact of smartwatches on the overall watch industry. It's a debated subject and it has been on our mind for a while now. We recently got reminded of the subject again with the acquisition of Fitbit by Google. But really, when I started thinking about this more seriously, a few months ago when I read this New York Times article, and the title of the article is something like, Apple hasn't crushed Swiss watch industry, not yet. The article talks about how in 2019, Apple will sell more units of Apple Watch than the entire Swiss watch industry, which is mind-boggling to think about. It's a great article and I will link it in the description below, but basically in today's video that's what I want to talk about because it has been on my mind for so long, and the best way to get it out of my head is to make a video, discuss it with you guys and kind of hear your feedback on this subject. So let's talk about the impact that smartwatches have on the overall watch industry. First, let's talk about some numbers. So overall, the smartwatch market has grown substantially year over year. I don't know if there is like an official source, the one source that you should trust, but for my research, seems to be about 40 to 30% year over year growth within the smartwatch market, which is very impressive. Now, the New York Times article talks about how the smartwatches don't really have much of an effect on the luxury Swiss watch industry. And it's true. If you look at the numbers, the watch sales of watches over $1,000 in the first quarter of 2019 has actually grown by 13%, and watch sales of watches over $3,000 in first quarter of 2019 versus the first quarter of 2018 has grown by about 16%. So the luxury watch market, or the luxury over $3,000 watch market, seems to be doing pretty well. Overall, seems like the growth within the smartwatch market doesn't affect the luxury market that much. However, if you look at the watch market under $1,000, so watches with suggested retail price under $1,000 seem to be down by about 15% in the first quarter of 2019, and watches under $500 seem to be down by 16% in the first quarter of 2019 versus the first quarter of 2018. So there is a clear effect of smartwatches on the watch market. Now, we can't tell exactly, like we can't say A equals B, because we don't know if it's exactly the smartwatches that are causing this. But common sense would say that yes, the smartwatches are what's causing this effect on the sub $1,000 watch market. Now, is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? Well, for the most part, I actually think it's a pretty good thing, because if you think about the kind of watches that are being affected, it's more of a Fossil and Movado group. The watches that are cheap, quartz watches, the watches that are the fashion watches. So these industries, at least on paper, seem to be the most affected. People that would normally buy a Daniel Wellington or something like that are now choosing to buy an Apple Watch. And that's not such a bad thing in my opinion. However, I do think that more traditional watchmakers, let's say like Seiko and Citizen, as well as traditional Swiss watchmakers like Tissot, Hamilton, basically the Swatch group, they're also being affected. They're not really releasing those numbers, but if you have, again, common sense, you can put the two together. That's why they're trying to innovate. That's why Seiko, in my opinion, not this only reason, but part of the reason why Seiko is trying to break into the higher price category, because it seems like this sub $1,000 price category has been very strongly affected by Apple Watch and by smartwatches in general. The New York Times article talks about the different ways different companies are dealing with this slum or with this effect of smartwatches. Now, some companies choose to create luxury smartwatches. We saw those early 2016, some in 2017, and pretty much all of them have failed. And it's a no-brainer. Of course they're gonna fail. Who wants to pay $2,000, sometimes $5,000 for a luxury smartwatch that technology will be outdated in a couple of years? You don't want to buy a gold or precious metals smartwatch, because the operating system, the OS, is what's important in a smartwatch, the functions that the smartwatch performs, and that's why a lot of people are drawn to smartwatches. Again, I'm jumping to some conclusions here, but it's very clear that this luxury smartwatch market has kind of failed. You also have companies like Frederick Constant that makes kind of a hybrid watch, a watch that looks like a normal analog watch, but it is also a fitness tracker, sometimes a sleeping tracker. So companies are trying to innovate. They are trying to steal some share of that Apple market, of that smartwatch market. And when you read the interviews of CEOs of these companies that are trying to break into the smartwatch market from the traditional watch groups like Frederick Constant, they're talking about how smartwatches are here to stay. They're here to change the Swiss watch industry, the watch industry overall forever. And those of us that don't see it are just being ignorant. Where other CEOs of more traditional watch companies choose to say a completely opposite thing. They're talking about how smartwatches are very good for the industry, how they are introducing a lot of new customers to horology, how a lot of people that were not interested in watches before are now interested in watches and are trying to eventually move up to more luxury timepieces. So overall, this new smartwatch market is good for the overall watch industry. And there are some studies and questionnaires to support that. If you read various articles online, Houdinki included, and this New York Times article, I think it also talks about that. Whenever they do a questionnaire of people that buy smartwatches, a very small percentage of people says because they bought a smartwatch, let's say an Apple Watch, they're not planning to buy a more luxury timepiece in the future, meaning buying a smartwatch does not prevent them, or at least they don't see it as preventing them from buying a more luxury timepiece in the future. So what do I think about this issue? Well, first let's talk about these questionnaires, these polls that a lot of CEOs of traditional watch companies are basing their projections on and are saying that overall smartwatches are good for the industry. I think people are not very good at assessing themselves. If you ask me something without any commitment, yeah, I'm gonna say, of course, I'm gonna buy a Rolex down the road. Just because I bought a Apple Watch doesn't mean I'm not planning to buy a Tudor or a Rolex or Patek Philippe in the future. But I think people underestimate how addictive these technologies really are. I also think that a lot of people underestimate the power of companies like Apple. The thing is that if you buy, let's say, and I'm talking about just an average consumer, just a person who's not crazy about watches, your cousin Billy, who doesn't know too much about watches, he just wants a nice watch. Let's say he buys a Bulova watch, and he loves that watch. He wears it every day for 2 years, and now he wants to buy a new watch. And he doesn't want to buy a smartwatch, he wants to buy another traditional timepiece. Chances are he's not going to buy another Bulova because he already owns a Bulova. And even if he loves it a lot, he will probably try to buy something else, let's say a Hamilton or a Seiko, versus people that own smartwatches. Let's say the same cousin Billy owns Apple Watch for 3 years, and it's time to update the Apple Watch because it's a gadget and the software in it wears out. He will most likely buy another newer Apple Watch. He will not switch to Samsung or Google or Fitbit or whatever because he's used to that interface, and now the newer Apple Watch has all the functionality that he's looking for. Of course, they keep on updating them, they keep on improving them slightly every year. So now he will upgrade to a different Apple Watch, and 3 years later, chances are he'll upgrade to a different Apple Watch. Or if he's a Google user, he'll upgrade to the next Google Watch, and then the next Google Watch, and so on. So why am I making this point? Because the same consumer will keep on giving money again and again and again to the same company, thus making that company more and more powerful, giving them more and more money to spend on marketing, and kind of being the advertisement billboard for that company. Very few of us will buy many watches from the same company. I'm not talking about, again, watch enthusiasts, because I own like 5 Seikos because I love these watches, but majority of people will buy one Seiko, maybe one Orient, one Bulova, one Hamilton. There's no huge brand loyalty within the bigger picture, within the average consumer. And that's important because Apple is already a huge company, and they're becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. Google is already a huge company and they're becoming bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, as opposed to traditional watch companies that are growing at a steady rate, that are growing at a totally different pace. So at some point, it will be pretty much impossible for watch companies, which probably is the case already, for traditional companies to compete against these big tech giants. So overall, I think nobody really knows whether smartwatches are good or bad for the overall watch industry. I think the big companies like the Rolex, like the Patek, like the AP, they will not be affected that much, at least not in the short term. Probably will be many, many years as they see any real impact on their business from smartwatches. However, I think all the lower end companies, all the more affordable watch companies, like the Japanese companies, like a lot of companies in the Swatch group, will see a pretty big impact in the near future. And all the designer companies, all the designer watches will see a huge impact in the near future. And my prediction is a lot of them will be almost wiped out. I appreciate you watching this video until the end. Please give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, subscribe to the channel, that helps out quite a bit, and leave a comment in the comment section below. Let me know what you think about the effect of smartwatches on the overall watch industry. At this time, I don't think there is a right or wrong answer. It's just an opinion, it's all speculation, and I am very thankful that I could get this out of my mind on video. And even though I made this whole video, please don't think that I'm somehow against smartwatches, that I'm against progress, because that couldn't be farther from the truth. I'm a huge fan of these companies. They make some great products, and it's their job to innovate, it's their job to provide better and better products for consumers. And it's a job of Swiss watch companies, of the overall watch industry, to keep up with that innovation, and maybe not innovate in terms of movements, but innovate in terms of their marketing, innovate in terms of how they acquire new customers, with their price points and the rest of it. So it's going to be very interesting to see how it all turns out, and leave your comments about it below. I always enjoy reading them. By the way, today on my wrist, I'm wearing a Seiko 5. I did a full review of this watch. That video can be found on the channel. I will also leave it linked in the description below. Also in the description below, there are two links. The first one is a secret link. Have a look if you're curious. The second link is a link to Bond NATO straps. That's right, we are now selling NATO straps. So if you're looking for a good quality NATO strap and want to support this channel at the same time, that's a good way to do it. Thanks for watching this video. Hope you liked it. Hope you enjoyed it. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.